Hey, it's me, Hannah, and I'm on a mission to uncover the perfect combination of techniques and materials, fabric and fabrication methods to achieve the flowiest, most dramatic cape ever known to man. I probably should have given myself more than like a week to figure it out, but alas, here we are. I have the pleasure of attending the upcoming Mythmakers Secret Society Ball and initiation ritual, which requires that all attendees convene for a night of revelry wearing a red hooded cloak or cape. I actually won the tickets in a raffle that the Mythmakers Society held along with some other creators in the community, through which they actually raised over $3,000 for the Immigrant Rapid Relief Fund in Minnesota. We love a secret society with a cause. Since I don't have a lot of time here for trial and error and my budget remains rather minimal, I have developed at least a little bit of a plan, so let me walk you through it. So the first pattern I have here is probably the most simple: circle with a head hole, to which I will attach a hood. I've made plenty of circle skirts, so I should have the experience and intelligence to make this happen. Emphasis on should. The next option is a pattern I purchased off of Etsy, which I'll link to down below in the description, and this baby has a train. Choo-choo. At first glance, from what I can tell, it's more of an oblong shape, more like an oval than a circle, and then the head hole is therefore sort of off-center, closer to the front of the cape. So also pretty straightforward, I think. And my last option, and the one that I already kind of feel is going to be the most dramatic, is this simplicity pattern from Rain Emery, who's a costumer and a cosplayer that I've been following online for years. And yeah, this pattern is pretty dramatic, but is it going to be flowy enough? How do we test this? Just kidding, I've already figured that out. To determine which of these three patterns strikes that perfect balance, I will be running through the halls of the Secret Society Ball venue. That's the chapel in Gattinsville, Maryland. And I will capture the cape's movement in slow motion, and whichever is deemed to have the most dramatic flow will be the winner. All right, let's figure out what fabric I can use for this test. If I'm being honest here, fabric choice is probably going to be a pretty big contributor to how well a cape is going to perform based on my standards. And if I was actually interested in science here, I would probably be going about this slightly differently, using the same fabric to test the individual patterns and then identify a pattern I like, and then test different fabrics to see which has the most flow, and so on and so forth. But look, I've barely even got time to make these 3 capes, and each cape is going to require anywhere from like 6 to 8 yards of fabric. So I'm thinking I start off with just the $2 per yard broadcloth that I got from Michaels, and we'll go from there. So for cape number 1, which is meant to just be a circle, my fabric is not wide enough for me to achieve that shape in one continuous piece of fabric, or even 2 or 4 for that matter. So I think I figured out how to get 6 or 7 triangular pizza slices out of what I have here, and those will fit together in a way that's not exactly a full circle, but it's going to be close enough for our purposes. The length that I'm looking for is 55 inches, so each side of these triangular pieces is going to be 55 inches, and I will have that rounded edge at the bottom, like a pizza slice. Man, pizza sounds good. Is it too early to break for lunch? All right, let's see how many pieces we can get out of this. I used my tape measure to mark 56 inches from the corner of the fabric, which included some allowance for a hem, to get a rounded triangular slice. I then used that piece as a pattern to get 6 more panels, so 7 panels in total. I got lipstick all over you. I traced the hood of a black Spirit Halloween cape that's been haunting my closet for years to create a pattern for this hood. I made sure to measure the base of the hood, excluding the seam allowance, to get the circumference of the neck hole. Then I cut out the piece with the top of the hood aligned with the fold before breaking out the sewing machine. Okay, we're making great progress over here. However, I don't know where I messed up on the math, on the geometry here to figure out the neckline of the cape and try and get it to match up with the neckline of the hood. Taking the seam allowance into consideration, I already did that. I made myself a little pattern based on the circumference of the circle, identified the radius, and somehow this circle translated to this neckline too big. So I am gonna have to gather this down a little bit in order to fit the neckline of the hood. And I guess that will be fine. It's just kind of annoying. I was kind of hoping I could get that to line up nicely. And I am still baffled. I genuinely don't know how it ended up not working out. So I'm just gonna carry on, do a little gather to make sure it all fits in. And I was thinking about how I was going to finish the seams on the inside. Even if I got matching thread, I don't really care to have a bunch of serged edges like visible if I were to really get some volume going. So I think I am going to line this. And actually, I may even treat this as a lining and instead use this wine-colored fabric that's the same type of fabric, broadcloth, as my outer layer. So I basically just need to repeat this process with this, making 7 pizza slice pieces and a hood out of this wine-colored fabric. I need to attach the hoods, and then right sides facing together, I need to sew up the entire outside seam of these pieces, leaving an opening so that I can flip it inside out. And then probably just attach some ribbon at the neckline, something really nice, maybe even like a velvet ribbon if I can get my hands on that. And I think I'll have Cape 1 done. If you can't tell, I woke up with a little bit of a sore throat this morning, so fingers crossed that it's like allergies or something like that, because I don't want to cut this project short and I really don't want to miss this ball. But I may go ahead and just heads down, wrap up this project, and then maybe take a little nap, just in case. But yeah, so that's the game plan. Let's see if we can wrap up Cape 1 today. Okay, I just need you to see how big this pattern piece is. This is all supposed to be one piece of fabric. I don't know if I have enough fabric. I don't know if I have wide enough fabric. I might have to break out more of the stash and see what we can do about this. I think the only fabric that I have that's going to work is what I was going to use for the simplicity pattern. And I definitely don't have time to order more fabric. I am concerned about our timeline and whether or not I'm going to be able to even get to that third sewing pattern. But I guess my best course of action is to plow through at this point, and let's just go ahead and see if we can get everything we need to out of the fabric that we have to at least get this part done. It's definitely gonna have to be in 2 pieces. I'm not gonna be able to like cut on the fold like I'm supposed to. Am I supposed to? Yeah, it's supposed to be cut on the fold. It's supposed to be twice this width. My fabric is not that wide. Hi. Also, pro tip, if you have a pattern that has a great deal of white space that you're printing out, skip those pages. All right, let's not get overwhelmed by the size. Let's get our fabric out. I decided to do French seams on cape number 2 because there was no way I was also going to cut out those pieces in a lining fabric. So I sewed the hood piece to the cape, wrong sides together, then trimmed the seam allowance before flipping it inside out so that the right sides are together, pressing, and then sewing another 1/4 inch or so seam allowance, encasing that raw edge. Okay, I think I have a solution to our amount of fabric problem. I have decided that I now have 2 red capes, and it might make sense to introduce a little variety versus actually just having 3 red capes. So I'm going to make a good chunk of this cape in black, in this black like velvety material that I thrifted a good amount of. It's definitely not wide enough for me to do the entire piece in this fabric, but I have some black satin that I think will work as sort of a base layer for the bigger pieces as well as the lining. And then I will use this fabric for the like detail pieces. I do also have some relatively sizable scraps from cape number 2 that I could maybe introduce, and then it'll still be like a little bit red, you know? And then I also have this tablecloth that might be usable in some capacity. We'll just kind of have to see what we can piece together and see if it makes sense to introduce red to the equation so that it still fits the bill for the ball. Even if it doesn't, either of these capes that I've finished are definitely good enough and have the drama and flow that I'm looking for. So I do really need to buckle down though if I am actually going to finish this in time to wear it on Saturday. So let's get to work. Okay, so far I am liking the way that the different types of materials are playing with each other. I've got this sort of heavier velvet material for the hood, then we have our red satiny fabric, and then the black for the body of the cape, and I think it is working well. However, I am a little worried because I am using the same material for the ruffle along the bottom of the cape. And I have these pieces cut out. This will be the bottom ruffle, and then this will be the ruffle on top of that. So I think that the way that the colors will play out, it will look very nice, but I'm worried about the weight of that heavier velvet. So we'll see how that affects the flow of the cape. It's certainly adding drama. It's also leaving a bunch of these little black tufts of velvet material all over my floor and my workspace, which is kind of annoying. But is it as annoying as how much my ironing board has been dyed red or pink as a result of all the red fabric I've been ironing? So yeah, that's kind of annoying, but we're making progress, and for that I am grateful. And I have the rest of this evening to finish up this cape, and then tomorrow is the ball. So I'm gonna put my head down and let's wrap up this cape. Before turning back to the third cape, I added the final details to the first two, starting by pressing and sewing up the opening that I had left to flip cape number 1 right side out after sewing the seams, and then turning to cape number 2, to which I added a loop to help me hold up the train. This was a crucial move. I also still needed a hem around the entire thing before I attached ribbons to both capes. Okay, while I love the progress that I have made on this cape, I have spent the last couple of hours just in an absolute fist fight with the trim, and I still only have the first layer of the trim on the cape, and I'm still working with a bunch of unfinished edges on the inside. I haven't even started the lining layers, and it's already after midnight, I guess now the day of the ball, so I think I'm gonna have to call it quits and not be able to take this cape with me to the ball. I'm so frustrated because it's ruining my experiment, but I will definitely be returning to this cape to finish it because I'm loving the shape and all of the different textures and everything, so it will be a good project to finish. And luckily, as a result of my experimenting, I have 2 other capes to choose from, so both of those are completely finished and ready to go, and I love both of them for different reasons, so I'm really excited to wear them and show you how flowy and dramatic they are. So I'm gonna wrap up here for tonight, get some stuff packed, and try and get some sleep before a day of travel. So I will see you tomorrow, or later today. Oh, it's late. Okay, good night. I feel as though we have a pretty clear winner here, at least for this specific event. But having successfully made 2 capes and bringing both to the ball with me ended up being pretty helpful, as Estrella was unable to secure one ahead of time. I was happy to lend her one, and she graced us with a glorious spin to really show off cape number 1's best features. Well, yeah, this cape definitely wins. I do feel like the other cape I made had a fighting chance of being the most dramatic and the most flowy and wonderful, but I'm gonna have to come back to that another time because I ran out of time. I feel like the train on this is what really took it to the next level when it came to drama. So if you are looking for the shape to make on your next cape, let me recommend one with a train because this worked out really well. And for being fabric that was, I think, $4.99 a yard, I'm pretty pleased and I'm very happy with it. So I have taken off my big old boots and put on my dancing shoes, and I think it's time to boogie.
Talk to me, it's what I want the most in my life.